Today, we're taking a look at the Nintendo Switch 2, and today we are going to do a full analysis and breakdown of the console. That's right, so we're going to look into everything. Games, prices, Switch 2 editions of games, you know, new stuff on the Nintendo Switch Online, everything. Everything is going to be fully packaged in this one video, and pretty much I'm going to break down essentially how I'm going to be doing this. So, pretty much for the next week, I will be making specific videos for specific content related to this console. So this video is strictly just related to the Nintendo Switch 2 console and hardware, and also the other features that the console is having. Pretty much anything else related to the console, pretty much stuff like the games like Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, a Kirby Air Rider speculation, all that other stuff. Those will be separate videos, as well they'll be as long as whatever this video is. This video I'm expecting to be probably extremely long because it's a full analysis and breakdown. I am going to be covering every aspect that we know, especially because I wanted to wait until we had the Switch 2 Direct done, the Nintendo Treehouse was done, and then as well as a couple days of footage, and also just some people discussing about the Switch 2 experience and how it was over there. So of course, every single piece of something related to this console is going to be in this video. So of course, that was just a little quick breakdown into what's happening. I will see if I can do timestamps for this video when we're talking about specific things. So remember, this is going to be a full analysis and breakdown. That's right, a full analysis and breakdown of the console and the hardware and the new features, accessories, what they have going on in terms of what's going to make this console better than the first Switch, and just in general, because this obviously we're transitioning from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2. So of course, this video is going to have everything that you're going to need, so let's get right into it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to be talking about here in this part of the video is of course the hardware. Obviously the main point of the Switch 2 is we need to know how much better this is going to run than the Switch 1, right? That has obviously been the speculation, that is obviously what we're all interested in knowing, pretty much what this console is going to deliver to us, the consumer. Why do we need to buy a Switch 2? What is it going to do that's going to be better than the Switch 1? And right here is pretty much an overview. We're going to find out all the new features. They showed us pretty much right here how the console looks on the TV. We've obviously seen it on tabletop, handheld, you know, in your pocket, whatever. Every way that you play this console, they have all the necessities. So this was just a quick overview of all that stuff. But with that being said, let's immediately go right into the hardware, right? Because obviously they're showing the games looking very smooth, so let's get right into it. The first big thing is a bigger screen, same thickness. So let's get right into what exactly that means. So pretty much right here we see a breakdown of the size difference of each console. So the Switch 1 was a 6.2 inch, the Switch 2 is a 7.9 inch screen. So pretty much the Switch 2 is pretty much almost 2 inches bigger than the Switch 1, which makes this thing look big and fat. But another thing too that's interesting about this right here is of course the simple fact that everything just looks bigger here. The screen, the console size, you know, there's way more buttons and things that you could probably do on this console than what you could do on the Switch 1. And as well, the Joy-Cons look twice the size of the first Joy-Cons. And we're going to get into a lot of Joy-Con stuff soon, because we've been hearing a lot of stuff that the Joy-Cons 2 version actually feel very good, and they're a lot larger than the Switch 1 Joy-Cons. So, of course, that is awesome right there. So let's continue right there. Of course, we have that, and then this is pretty much the same size when you look at it from a side-by-side difference, if you look at it from this angle. High definition display. So pretty much, it can do it can render twice the amount of pixels as the Switch 1, which is why they show it in this way. So for example, that darker gray right there, you can see on the bottom left of the screen right there of what they're showing, that is a Switch 1 and all the pixels it can render. The Switch 2 pretty much completely does it double the time of what the Switch 1 could do in terms of pixels. And as we can see, it can do the amount the Switch 1 does and then do all the lighter gray area there. So of course, it's a much more powerful when it comes to reading pixels. And then right here they also show the difference here. They show it in 720 and then they show it reading it in 1080, because a lot of games on the Switch 1 they would run at 720 30 or 720 60 depending on how the game could handle the Switch 1 hardware. Switch 2, we're gonna get into what it can do in a bit, but let's say right now we'll see. Pretty much majority of games, no matter what, we are finally getting, most likely every single game is 1080p or above, which is perfect, because I feel like we're now at a point where I feel like majority of games should be able to do 1080. I think we're super past 720p, so 1080p is perfect, at least in terms of the minimum that's required for this console. Smooth gameplay up to 120 FPS. So 120 FPS is only available in compatible games. So pretty much, this is pretty much huge news right here. I mean, dude, I can't believe we're in a living time where we have a Nintendo console that can do 120 FPS. That is crazy. And we're going to get into other things too, and I'm going to have a larger breakdown of why this is so important. But 120 FPS, like now we have games running pretty much higher than we can expect. That is awesome. So we're going to get a lot more, you know, crisp games and stuff like that. But obviously now we have Vivid LCD HDR support. So here's the interesting thing. I will get to it when we talk about stuff with the Switch 2 experience and comparisons from over there. But Vivid LCD and HDR support. So pretty much we had the LCD screen returning. That's the base Switch 2, which is what I expected. I was hoping they would do an OLED version of this as well, but with HDR support and also VRR being with this console, and now we got that confirmed, it makes sense that they're doing LCD with HDR support. And by the way, we're gonna see it soon, but man, this looks incredible when you compare it to just a normal LCD, and then you have the HDR on the left. I mean, look just how beautiful Mario Kart World just looks right there, man. It looks beautiful. Joy-Con 2 attach magnetically. So this is obviously the bigger thing. We obviously see them. They just pop right into the screen. Pretty much the difference here with the Switch 1 is the Switch 1, you would take the Joy-Cons and you'd have to slide it down pretty much, right? With the Joy-Con 2s, you actually have it, that magnetic thing there that actually goes within the console. So that pretty much makes a lot of things a lot easier when you're just trying to plop it in. Now, a lot of people would think this might hurt the console, like it could potentially get some scratches, it could potentially damage some things. However, they do show that this is actually very secured magnetically wise. Like you can just pop it right in, and you just, I feel like magnetically wise, I mean, it definitely works out. I definitely do think it's going to be actually better than having it the way the Switch 1 did, because obviously, you know, those, they have the thing on the side so that way it can come down. Here, there's a lot bigger Joy-Cons, however, coming in magnetically, I think is actually the right choice. And we'll talk about when we get to that game, but there is a tech demo that actually shows how this thing actually can work magnetically to make sure everything is safe and secure. And as well, there are buttons on the back if you want to take it out. I believe they also show it here. Yep, exactly. So it stays safe and secure right here, and the only way to get it out, there is a button attachment on the back, and you click that attachment button to try to get it out. So we have a bigger SL and SR buttons, which, thank God, because the SL and SR buttons, when you're playing the Joy-Con, you know, just sideways and you're only playing with one, the buttons are very small. These buttons are like twice the size of the Switch 1's buttons on the side. So if you're only playing with one Joy-Con, for example, let's say you play a game of like Mario Party with other people and you have to use the Joy-Cons because, you know, that's the only way how we can have multiple people playing, because that's like, we're limited in terms of controllers, right? This is actually going to make it a lot more comfortable for people to play in this style. So I think, you know, stuff like that is very good. And stuff like that. Larger control sticks, of course, this is very important. My only thing now with these Joy-Cons is, please, for the love of God, don't have stick drift. The major thing with the Joy-Con 1s, despite me loving Joy-Cons, right, and the one thing about them for me is they are super prone to having stick drift. And so I'm hoping with the Switch 2, these joysticks, which look a lot better from what I'm seeing here, hopefully they'll be able to be fine and I can have them safely for a lot of years, because the Switch 1 was actually the first console I ever received stick drift on a controller, and it is becoming super prone in modern controllers, which I don't get how this has started, but I'm super hoping and praying that the Switch 2 Joy-Cons will not have stick drift. Please, for the love of God, I am begging. But of course, bigger sticks here, and of course they look a lot more fluid, and then of course we see mouse controls for the use of Joy-Con 2s, which a lot of people actually, in terms of the Switch 2 experience when giving feedback, they've actually said the mouse controls work super perfectly. They work like a charm, and a lot of people actually say now that they recommend playing this way if you're playing Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which we'll make a video of that, of course, later down the line, but still, you have this right here, you know, the mouse Joy-Con feature. I mean, this is going to be pretty sick, and they even show Metroid Prime 4 Beyond here, using it as an example, and a lot of people actually say pointing and aiming with this is actually very good and stuff like that. They even show drag and drive. By the way, I am using the version that they did post-direct. I've watched the direct, I've seen everything and how they presented it, so I've seen it originally, but this is obviously after they showed those games, and the only reason why I'm doing it, and this is because those are important stuff we'll be talking about later on in the video. So, back to what we was looking at here. Improved speakers, clear audio. I mean, that's a given. That's pretty expected for every console. Not really too much to say here, but it is good that we're obviously having improved audio, clearer sounds when it comes to these games. So good. However, this is a big one. Built-in mic for easy voice chatting. So of course, we'll get to the game chat and all that stuff later on. That was actually one of the first things they showed with this new console because of the mysterious C button. We'll get to that soon. But here, you obviously have a built-in mic, and I think that is actually going to be big when it comes to Mario Party. Mario Party is probably a game that's going to be able to use this feature a lot because a built-in mic can be used for a lot of things. But I'm also curious to see what other games try to utilize this as like a gimmick or some type of feature in their games. I'm curious to see what games use those. 3D audio gives a sense of space, of course. This is something that has been with gaming for a while, you know, with headphones, you know, just the clear audio and all that stuff aspects. You know, this is pretty much just the audio section. It's stuff that you expect when you're evolving in consoles and stuff. Audio is one of the most important things because that gets you into the experience of when you're playing these games. So that, of course, makes a lot of sense, right? New stand, freely adjustable viewing angle. So, I'm actually going to say this right now. I'm very happy this is a thing because I broke the stand on my Switch once, accidentally. I accidentally got the chip, a little chip of the stand broken, and it's simply because it is very kind of hard to get that stand out, and it's not really that big of a stand. Like, you put it, and then it's like, it can easily just break off. But the thing I love about here on the Switch 2 is that not only is it just on one side of the stick, but now you have like a whole square sort of stand here, and it looks super flexible. It looks like it's going to be able to be withstanding a lot, so that's good. Now we have two USB-C ports for the console. So we have one in the bottom, and we also have one at the top, which is pretty perfect. So obviously we see this, we have one in the bottom, and as well now they showed one in the top. Of course they show their very new camera accessory to be a part of this, and they also show what I'm assuming is going to be the next handheld charger for this console, which is great. Larger, faster storage. This is one of the big ones that I don't think a lot of people are honestly really talking about and how important it is. But essentially, the Switch 2, from pretty much what we're seeing right here, can do 8 times the size of Switch 1 games. So the Switch 1 had a 32 gigabyte storage, so pretty much you could do like let's say like 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 games, like first party, for example, if you got Nintendo games like that. That is all you could really play on the Switch 1 at a time, because then obviously you'd have to worry about the space of the console and stuff like that. Now, the good thing about the Switch, and then one thing I really like about Nintendo, is there's no download times. You literally just put in the cartridge, you can immediately play the game. That's one of the best things about the Switch. The Switch 2, 256 gigs, 8 times the amount of space. This is big. This is actually one of the biggest things for me personally, because I'm a person that's most likely going to be playing a lot of these on the Switch 2, and so I'm curious to see how these work out. Speaking of which, we'll talk about physical copies and actually how this gigabyte stuff plays into that factor, but that's for later on in the video. And of course they show it right here, you know, just simply just showing a game and how it's running on this, and the loading times and stuff like that. So, new dock, 4K support. That is right. So on the back here of the Switch 2, we have all these different things here to connect to a TV. And the interesting thing I have to say about this, right, is the simple fact that when you put it in here, you can see right here, display TV resolution, and you can choose up to 2160p 4K. And let me just say this, we have confirmation that games can run 4K 60 and 1080 120 frames per second. That is kind of surreal, this is as modern as I feel like I've seen Nintendo get when it comes to a console. So seeing this is pretty massive. And the other thing that we've also got confirmed thanks to this tab is that the Miis are still around, amiibos are still going to be a part of this console, and I see the themes tab. Please, for the love of God, be more than just black and white themes, bro, please. And then, of course, you have notifications. So we obviously have Mii confirmation, which makes a lot of sense because recently they just showed Tomodachi Life 2. Amiibos, I mean, I feel like because of the simple fact that people have spent so much money on Amiibo, I feel like it makes a lot of sense continuing. I'm assuming they're going to be a mainstay just like the Miis. They're for sure going to be here for this foreseeable future. But just in general, we see easy stuff here. This is awesome. I mean, 4K 60 on a Nintendo game, I never thought I'd see that ever in my life. So the fact that I'm going to be able to play games 4K 60, it even says it on the bottom here, frame rate is fixed to a maximum of 60 FPS for a 4K output, which makes a lot of sense. So pretty much you can play games 4K 60 and 1080p 120 frames per second, which is a big milestone for a Nintendo console to ever reach. So that's perfect for them. So yeah, pretty much, yeah, they continue to show this here and stuff like that, so that's big. And then fan ventilation for power cooling. So this is actually, to me, another massive important thing, because the Switch 1 was very prone to being overheated. It could get overheated very fast, and so the fact that we have a fan ventilation to make sure the Switch 2 will always be cool and everything will be fine is good. So it would always be able to be cooled down, and we'll be able to play these games without feeling like our Switch, like we're destroying our console because it's overheating like crazy. So, good thing is, we have confirmation about that, which is very good. And obviously we see here how it's, you know, being important. Plays compatible with Nintendo Switch 1 games. This we already knew about. But obviously they show here Switch 1 games compatible with Switch 2. This is actually going to be important, as we'll see later down the line why this is. But of course, Switch 1 games compatible with Switch 2. And then obviously here, this is the ending of the whole showcase of the Switch 2, which of course is available June 5th, 2025. That was one of the big things about this reveal, was that it's releasing on June 5th, 2025. And with that, brings me to the price. Alright, let's get right into the price segment here. So we know the release date, June 5th, 2025, which makes a lot of sense. You know, I want to talk about the price and release date here. Release date is perfect. June 5th, 2025 makes a lot of sense, because I feel like that goes in line with how Nintendo likes to reveal their consoles. They like to release it in 2 months in advance, so makes a lot of sense there. So yeah, available June 5th, 2025. However, let's get into the console price, the main point of this segment. So, prices here, we have the Switch 2 version, which is $450 retail price. So, that honestly, to me, is actually a fair price for the console itself. You know, I feel like I know Nintendo, I know how they like proceed with things, and I knew the Switch 1 was $300 at launch. The Switch OLED is a bit more, so I knew originally the Switch 2, no matter what, was going to be $400. However, the more and more I was seeing the Direct, and the more and more I saw like the fact that this console could run 4K, 60, 1080, 120, it led me to believe that there's no way Nintendo is doing $450 or less. It was either $450 or above, or $500. I know how Nintendo rolls, and from what a lot of people agree with me, at least from what I've seen from the internet, I have the same opinion as a lot of people. The console price is actually fair. I think it's actually a good price for what this Nintendo console can do. This is by far Nintendo's most advanced machine they've ever have. And already, in other regions, I believe I saw it, like already in the UK and also in Japan, this console is already selling out in both areas. Like, the sales of this console is not what I'm worried about. This console's already selling out in multiple countries. I believe I read it already sold out in UK, it already sold out in Japan, it's already selling out in other Asian countries. I think in China it was selling out. And obviously I know it's selling out in the USA immediately once it happens. So yeah, Switch 2 with the $450 price, I think is pretty fair for what this console is capabilities are and stuff like that. Switch 2 with the Mario Kart World bundle going around for $500, I think is good actually. You know, the game is only $500. Whoa, I almost said the game itself is $500. Whoa. But the game itself is $50 in this bundle. You get a digital copy of Mario Kart World. Obviously, when it comes to Nintendo consoles, I love going physical copies here, which there's one game, Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, which we'll get to third-party support soon. That is one of the first physical copies I'll probably be getting on the Switch too, but Mario Kart World being a digital copy here, I think makes a lot of sense. This game going for $500. I think actually the console being bundled with this game, I think is probably which is what everyone's going with the first option. And then, because what we found out is that it says right here, limited time production through fall 2025, available while supplies last. So this is running till the fall. So this is a limited time bundle with this game. So that is definitely going to be a lot of people's priority option when it comes to buying this console. If people only want the hardware and then go with like a cheaper option of a game, makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's going to be cheaper games that are going to be on this console. However, Switch 2 with the Mario Kart World bundle, I think makes a lot of sense for it going at $500. However, now we need to talk about game prices, and I've had this opinion since the Direct has finished. I've been telling a lot of people about this because, of course, this has caused a serious debate on the internet for very, and I mean very good reasons. And I'm going to talk about this for a couple of minutes. So I'm currently in the Mario Kart World page, all the way at the end of the page. It's a very good page, actually shows the game in a very good way. However, it shows that the game, of course, is a launch game, which we expect. Of course, I'm going to be making a vid about Mario Kart World in the next video. That's actually going to be the next video I make. However, I want to talk about this here since we're talking about Switch 2 and everything. This game is $80, and I feel like, you know, this is the only game we know for sure is $80. The other games like Donkey Kong Bonanza and Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, they're most likely going to be $70 games. And from what I've seen from those games, makes sense. I knew Nintendo was most likely going to make games $70 because they only had one game throughout the whole Switch 1's lifespan that was $70. However, this is crazy. I mean, games potentially becoming $80 is setting a scary precedent for the gaming industry as a whole. I mean, I will talk about this, but I feel like I know a lot of people say no matter what this game is going to be this price, but I'm even going to say it still. I think this guarantees and confirms that Grand Theft Auto 6, which is one of the biggest games, one of the anticipated games of all time, that game for sure is going to be $100 now. Like, I think they saw this. They saw Nintendo put a price tag on a game, a physical copy game, with the digital copy by itself also being this price. There's no way GTA 6 is now going to be like less, like, and even so, like, I've seen people talk about this as well, like the only game that should be more than $70 is GTA 6. But here's my thing, the way how we put prices on things is also affecting availability of these products. Mario Kart World, I feel like if you buy this game by itself, I feel like that's really limiting people's accessibility to this game, because now they're looking at this price and they're kind of looking at this like, damn, this game is kind of too expensive. I don't think I'm going to be able to get this game, which I think is very sad, because I'm going to say this now from what I've seen. The Nintendo Switch 2 Direct was by far one of the greatest presentations we have gotten in this decade, by far. It's like, for me, it's a top, I think it's number 1 or number 2. It is by far one of the top presentations we've got. For being able to show what the console is going to be able to have, it was perfect. Like, it was able to do what it needed to do. However, this is scary, bro. $80 for video games? 80? Like, dude, as someone who grew up, right? As someone who grew up with video games, as someone who's continuing to love this hobby, you know, it's one of my passions, it's one of the things I look forward to, right? This is my sort of thing. This is what I look forward to a lot of the days that I'm here. I feel like this is, like, I agree so wholeheartedly that, like, gaming is by far one of the most expensive hobbies out there, and I feel like it has just been getting harder and harder to get stuff, and Nintendo doing this is crazy. Like, this is setting a scary precedent for the gaming industry, because I know greedy companies out there are going to look at this and now take full advantage of now pricing their games at $80, and it's most likely going to fuck with those companies. Now, this is Nintendo. Nintendo's like pretty much like, you know, that is like the pinnacle of the gaming industry. They have hardcore fans, you know, myself included. So of course, you know, this automatically makes me buy the bundle, because the bundle, now this game turns into, instead of $80, it's $50, which now kind of makes this game look like a steal in retrospect. But the fact that if you buy the console by itself, and then you have to buy this game which comes out at launch, that's the main first party title that comes out at launch, and then you have to pay $80 for it, I think is super greedy. This is crazy. Like, even if it was because of those things, it doesn't matter, dude. I know Nintendo. I know they're putting this price tag because they know people are going to buy it. They know, because they're greedy, bro. They want people to buy this with the fucking bundle for limited time. And I guarantee you, by fall, when this limited time edition of this console that you can pre-order is done, 1000% this game is going to be cheaper by that time. And I think, again, this sets like a very scary like future for games, and I really hope that games will be able to be cheaper as we move forward. Like, I thought 60 was like a perfect price tag. I thought 70 was definitely starting to like get a little overboard, but 80 is just ridiculous. Like, this is crazy. No game, in my opinion, like, there's games, right, that I feel like wow, I feel like I got this for steal, or wow, this was way more expensive than what it should have been. We debate about this, and like, we look at products for what their availability should be. This is just like, as much as I've seen a lot of Mario Kart World, as much as this game looks awesome, it looks like a Mario Kart masterpiece to me, as much as this game looks incredible and has so many fantastic things going for it, but this is definitely not because of the tariffs. Like, now obviously the tariffs have affected like the pre-orders in the USA. The pre-orders are supposed to go up on April 9th. It got delayed here because of what's going on in the world. Again, that's for another thing. I would definitely go into looking at political news and stuff like that for that, but that's all I'm going to say about this here. All I'm going to say, though, is that this is crazy. This is absolutely because Nintendo is feeling the greed and they want people to buy this. And in my opinion, I feel like this is kind of just forcing people to just get the bundle. So the next thing I want to get into in this video is the new GameChat feature, which they showed is what the mysterious C button does on this controller. So on the right Joy-Con at the very bottom near the home button, we have a new C button. And what that accesses is Nintendo GameChat, which, thank God, bro, we finally have Nintendo Party Chats on the fucking console, bro. I don't get how it took this long. Either way, I'm happy and I'm satisfied with it. And you know what's great? Honestly, this looks a pretty good version of like a Nintendo Party Chat. Now, me, as someone who makes content and obviously stuff like that, I'm not really sure how much I'm accessing this, to be quite honest. Like, I feel like, you know, it's cool, and I love that the C button, you know, is this Party Chat feature, and I'm assuming, but however, I want to know like how many people I can have in a Party Chat. I'm assuming maybe like 4 people, I think, is what they're doing, because it's just a simple game chat, and most Nintendo games, you know, is up to 4 players. I mean, however, if I was playing like Smash, which does like way more, I would be like curious to know how big of a game chat I could probably do. I mean, I feel like that would make me like kind of interested to see what would it be. But either way, there's a lot of stuff in this specifically. For instance, we know that there's a lot of mic features, built-in mic stuff. They showed a lot of different things as well. Like, we're going to talk about the fact that they're screen sharing in this, which they're showing right now. So you can show your screen, and it looks like the frames drop like completely for everyone's like screen down there. Now, what's cool is they still like, I feel like Nintendo was bold here, right? Like, they weren't bullshitting us here. Like, this is actually how it's going to look when playing with other people. But what I do love is that obviously your main screen is the important part here. Like, you share your screen, people can see like what you're doing in the race. Like, it's still seeable. It like the frames just look like they took like a serious dip when it comes to the screen sharing. But either way, it's still cool to see what other people are doing. It's still cool that your games still run flawlessly. Like, they look phenomenal still. And, you know, this is like a cool thing. Again, it's been like ages. I still don't get how it took until now for us to finally get a actual like Nintendo Party Chat and stuff like that in a console. But hey, I'm happy this is a thing. I'm happy this is here. And the other thing is, now we know that you can do even more features. Like, you can expand a person's game screen, which, you know, the frames, I have no clue if I'm ever doing that personally, because like, you expand another person's game screen and then it looks, you know, it looks like it's running at like 4 FPS. But either way, the main point here is that your screen still looks good, so when you're playing your games, you know, it's still running smoothly and stuff like that. Now, of course, if we go through this video a bit more here, let's take a look. There's obviously muting yourself, like if you have to take a call. Like, for example, this guy, obviously they're showing this is how you access it, the C button. Pretty much you can mute yourself in case you have to do something, which makes a lot of sense. And what's also great is anything can be party chatted here. Any game that you can think of that could be a Nintendo party chat can pretty much be done here, which is nice. And then, of course, they're showing the Nintendo Switch 2 camera. And this is, like, really funny to me because, I mean, here's the camera, and this is actually going to be used for some games as a feature, which I honestly think is pretty interesting, right? Some games trying to utilize this camera feature is kind of interesting. It's also fun that you could just be playing these games in a party chat and then have this camera being accessible. Now, obviously, if you're a YouTuber or a streamer, I mean, you're most likely sticking with the camera that you have and just playing the games through that way. But it is cool that they integrated the fucking camera into this stuff, you know. And I feel like this is going to make games like very fun to play with other people, because now you have this accessibility as well when it comes to these party chats. So I think Nintendo honestly did a good job. They were very bold in showing what they did here. Do I see myself accessing this as much? I don't personally think so, but I do know some people who probably would access this. And I think that's great, you know, as long as this is a thing that people can go to, that's awesome. And I think there could be a lot of good YouTube and YouTube style content that can be made thanks to this stuff. So I think it's awesome that we have this here, and I think it's going to be a good feature for down the line. So GameChat, I'm happy, and low-key, I am satisfied that this is here, and we obviously know that there's this camera. And we also know, last thing, my bad, I just was gone there, but the GameChat open access period is open from March 31st, 2026. So we get a full year pretty much of this being available until it obviously locks you to having the Switch Online, which, I mean, that makes sense. You know, I actually like that Nintendo is giving us free access until the 31st of next year, but also it makes sense that you need Switch Online, you know, you need Switch Online to pretty much use this feature, which I think makes a lot of sense. Now I want to show this. This is Super Mario Party Jamboree expansion. This is one of the first two Switch 2 edition games that they actually showed, where there's extra content exclusively for the Nintendo Switch 2 version of this game. And they actually used the mouse controls, they used a new camera, so let's take a little look around this stuff, right? So first, we obviously know Jamboree. It's going to look beautifully on the Switch 2. I mean, it run fine on the Switch 1, but it's going to look beautifully on the Switch 2. There's going to be exclusive mini-games for the Switch 2 that utilize, you know, the mouse controls, the fucking camera. And then this is one of the new things. The camera is used for stuff like Jamboree TV. So you use this camera. It's integrated into a lot of things when playing Super Mario Party Jamboree, which, honestly, Mario Party expansion being used for the gimmick game, I think honestly makes a lot of sense, right? Mario Party is a game that's filled with gimmicks, it's filled with a lot of things that try to be innovative and different from a lot of things, and as it's being like a party game, you know, filled with a lot of stuff, I think it's cool. So Jamboree TV is cool. Bowser Live is a very interesting way. This thing actually utilizes the camera in every foreseeable aspect, which I think is very interesting. It even uses the mic feature, the built-in mic. So these are definitely the gimmick games. I do think, though, this is something that, like, you jump into once, or you jump into, like, a couple times as, like, a fun thing, and then you're pretty much, like, done with it, and then you play just like normal Mario Party. But the fact that this is here, I think is fun, and it is good that this is a mode that you can just, like, go back to, you know, one time or another, and then you just, like, enjoy pretty much the content that it has there. But outside of that, you know, this is fun, this is a cool thing. Obviously exclusive mini games that utilize the mouse controls and the camera, I think makes a lot of sense. And also, you know, I think it makes a lot of sense that Super Mario Party Jamboree is the game to get this style of content and stuff like that. And, you know, who knows, maybe they'll show other Mario, most likely the next Mario Party, the next mainline Mario Party that comes out, you know, during the Switch 2, absolutely will be getting uses of the mouse controls and other stuff like that. But it is cool that we have something like this coming to the console, and it's releasing on July 24th, 2025. So the Switch 2 version of this game will be good. And it says right here, if you upgrade to Super Mario Party Jamboree, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, and Jamboree TV by purchasing an upgrade pack. So we're gonna get into upgrade packs and stuff like that later on, but keep an eye out for this later on in the video. But I just wanted to quickly mention this since they show it here. The Super Mario Party Jamboree with plus Jamboree TV content, I think is going to be very cool. Now I want to get into one of the other big controversies for me, actually, personally. Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. So pretty much this is a game that's going to be there on launch day for the console, and it's pretty much going to be a game that pretty much shows you what the Switch 2 can do. It's pretty much like the tech demo. It has a lot of tech demo mini games. Let's get right into more of what it shows, right? So pretty much here, it's pretty much just, you know, you get to explore pretty much like the Joy-Cons in the console. You pretty much get to read stuff that pretty much show you what this console can do. So pretty much gives you like intel and information of what things do. For example, it shows how important the SL and SR buttons are for the Joy-Cons to actually become magnetic and be able to have no issues when going into the console. And that's pretty great. I think it's pretty awesome. And we also know that they're made of steel. So they give you a lot of interesting details about specific things with the console. As well, there's a lot of mini games in these. They're actually like tech demo mini games where you can play around and stuff. There's a lot of things, you know, they show like how rumbles are working, the stand, they show you the mouse controls, they show you what the buttons, how good and how comfortable the buttons are on this controller. But yeah, there's also a lot of tech demo mini games that you can try out, so you can try out all the different features. For example, there's stuff like golf, there's stuff like pretty much, you know, being a UFO and trying to dodge these spike balls. You know, there's things like this that is pretty cool. There's things like putting pieces together, moving objects around. You know, there's a lot of interesting tech demo stuff, you know, moving maracas and stuff like that. You know, there's things that show you this stuff, and I think that's pretty awesome that they have something like this. And I would be saying this if this was a game that you could honestly just have immediately as soon as you fucking play the console. Because you know what they did? This game, I feel like, should have been packaged in with every Nintendo Switch 2 for free. So that way everyone can just jump into this if they want to find out something specific, if they want to play some of the tech demos because they found it to be a lot of fun. I think that's great. However, what blows my mind, and something that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, is that this is obviously a launch date, which that makes sense. I mean, that is perfect. But this is as a paid digital only game. We have confirmation now that this game is $10. Why? This makes no sense. Like, literally, this is actually going to cook this game immediately as the console comes out, because everyone will just be playing Mario Kart World and they'll see this game is like $10 and we'll just still be scratching our heads as why. And I think honestly this game is actually going to be one of the first examples we're going to see soon when this console releases that Nintendo has to force a game to become free. Because I don't see this game, really a lot of people really, like, people wanted this game to be free. The fact that this is a paid digital only game makes no sense. Like, this should just be a game that's free, built in, packaged with the Switch 2. That way you can just play around with it. Because, bro, all it is just you just knowing the Switch 2 and you just playing some tech demos. And once again, I think this shows the Nintendo greed, where this makes no sense because this is just tech demos. And the fact that you're selling us $10 for tech demos, like, bro, please. Now, there's this other game I want to talk about, which is a game that they showed is fully utilizing the mouse controls. The only way you can play this game, I believe, is with the mouse controls, which again, people have said is a very good way of playing with these Joy-Cons. So, this game is called Dragon Drive, and pretty much what it is it's pretty much like the gimmick game that you're going to have during the summer of this year. So pretty much it's going to release this summer, and it's going to be a game where pretty much a lot of people can just hop in, play pretty much what is essentially going to be basketball, which I'm a basketball guy, so this is fire. But obviously this is Dragon Drive, so pretty much this game is essentially just going to be you using the mouse controls. And what's interesting is we've actually found this out thanks to some intel and information due to the Switch 2 experience. It is hidden, but we have heard some details that there are some trick systems and some utilization of the rails on the side there. We will definitely find that out pretty soon, I would assume, on how these things work. But the fact that we have something like this, I think is pretty cool. You know, I think this is actually going to be a lot of fun for a lot of people. And again, this is essentially the ARMS of Switch 2. Will it be as successful as ARMS? Honestly, I hope so, because I love basketball. So I really hope this will be as successful as ARMS. But I do see this game honestly garnering a community for people that are going to want Switch 2 mouse-controlled style games, and we know it's coming out in the summer. So we're for sure getting more details of this game soon, and it's only a matter of when. This next segment I want to talk about in this video is the Nintendo Switch 2 accessories. So stuff like Pro Controllers, stuff like cases, you know, stuff like the camera, all that stuff. Let's talk about them. So first thing it says here is controllers, a camera carrying controllers, a camera carrying cases, and more, made exclusively for the Nintendo Switch 2 system. So the first thing, they even show us the prices. So the first thing they show is the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller. So this thing is $80 itself. That's pretty crazy for me personally, but let's look around it, right? So this is the front of it. You know, a lot of the buttons look really fat. I actually like that. The buttons look big and everything. Here's a C button on the bottom here. And let's zoom in on it. Yeah. So here's the joysticks. You have the buttons. They look pretty fat here. Something I like. Here's the C button on the bottom, the D-pad, plus minus buttons, the recording button, and then you have your LR, SR buttons, SL and SR buttons up there, right? And honestly, what's interesting is that this front is and the back are black, but they put the top as a white, you know, sort of thing. Here you can plug in a micro, you can plug in your headset, which is nice. And then on the back they even show more of your LR, ZL, ZR buttons. You have this obviously to try to get it connected to the console and stuff like that. Here's a USB-C port. Here's, you know, the thing to show like which number controller you are. However, the interesting thing that we found out thanks to the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct is that the Pro Controller secretly now has 2 extra buttons. What these buttons are going to do, we'll have to figure out. But we have a GL and GR buttons here on the back and stuff like that. And then obviously we see some pictures of holding it. It looks like this is going to be a very comfortable controller to hold. And this is probably something that I'll probably buy later on. I think I'm only going to stay with the Joy-Cons for like the first couple months, and then when I feel like I need a Pro Controller, I'll probably go ahead and buy that just so I have an additional controller to use. So I think that is perfect there. And obviously it says right here, take your gaming to the next level with the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller. This controller includes a C button for opening the GameChat menu at any time, GL and GR buttons that you can freely map to any button you choose, an audio jack for headphones and headsets, and other features. So GL/GR buttons you can freely map to any button you choose, which I think is actually pretty cool. That is one of the features. However, I also see some games, if it's only Pro Controller only, using those buttons for something. So features, you have HD rumble, the motion controls, of course, built-in amiibo functionality, so continuing me saying that amiibo is still going to be a thing. The capture button, of course, the thing that we see up here on the left. The C button for GameChat, GL/GR buttons that you can map to any button you choose, an audio jack, 4-pole stereo, 3.5mm mini plug, and then of course only for use with the Nintendo Switch 2 system. Then here we go, we have the Joy-Cons, right? So the Joy-Cons are $90, which is definitely a price. Thank God I'm gonna have a pair of these on launch, because $90 is kind of crazy. But let's look into it, right? So obviously we can tell here they're much bigger. They're like twice the size. I've actually seen a side-by-side picture of the Joy-Cons or the Switch 1's Joy-Cons, and it's like pretty much like as you would expect. The Joy-Con 2s are so much bigger than the Switch 1 Joy-Cons that it makes a lot of sense why it's like this. But yeah, here's the strap as well, you know, the strap to give yourself more comfortability with it. And obviously the left has the left joystick, it has the 4 D-pad buttons, and then the recording button, and then on the right you have your A, B, X, Y. The plus and minus buttons are on both on the top. You have your camera joystick, which is what I like to call it. You have your home button, your C button for the GameChat, and then the strap as well. Looking at them next to each other, you see more of a glimpse of the SL and SR buttons, how much bigger they are, which is awesome. And then obviously you see the magnetic part. This is how they get to magnetically be attached to the console. And then right here, you obviously see more on how they look in the hands. They look just a lot bigger. They look like you're definitely going to be comfortable with these. And like I said, I hope that these don't have stick drift, because if it's going to be $90 just to buy a pair of these, I swear to God, these better be no stick drift. Anyways, includes 2 Joy-Con 2 straps. The updated Joy-Con 2 controllers have motion controls and HD Rumble 2, along with the new C button for easy game chat access and all new mouse controls and compatible games. This set includes both a left and right Joy-Con 2 controller, along with a pair of Joy-Con 2 straps. Perfect for local multiplayer with a friend and compatible games, only for use with the Nintendo Switch 2 system, of course. Next, we have the Joy-Con 2 charging grip, which I find interesting. So here we go. Here it is, the grip. This is essentially the modernized and use of the grip that we had from the first one. And I actually love how this looks. So here's a charging grip, pretty much. So you get to put both controllers here. It looks very nice. I expect this to be very comfortable with the Joy-Cons when using it. And of course, this also has the GL and GR buttons, which you can, put into any buttons by mapping it. And I'm assuming some games will use that as extra buttons that you can use for a specific feature. And then obviously the USB-C port up at the top. So let's look at this over here. It includes a USB-C charging cable, which is the thing we saw at the top. Attach the Joy-Con 2 controllers to the Joy-Con 2 charging grip to use as a classic style controller or handy charging station with the included USB-C charging cable. It also features the GL/GR buttons, which can be custom mapped. Only for use with the Nintendo Switch 2 system, the Joy-Con 2 charging grip is sold separately and not included with the Nintendo Switch 2 system. So because it's a charging grip, this goes for $35, and it's also, when you buy a Switch 2, this is something that you have to get separately, because all they give you is a normal grip. This is a charging grip, so it charges your controllers and stuff like that, which is fire. The Joy-Con 2 straps, these are $13. These are self-explanatory, not really too much to say here. There's straps, they're supposed to make you comfortable and stuff like that. You can attach them to the Joy-Cons and stuff like that, so pretty good stuff here. And then a brief description. Each of these 2 Joy-Con 2 straps can be attached to a Joy-Con 2 controller for use. The strap may also allow for more stability when using mouse controls in compatible games. The strap can be easily snapped into place and removed with a push of the release button, only for use with the Nintendo Switch 2 system and Joy-Con 2 controllers. And now, this is absolutely being sold for Mario Kart World. The Joy-Con 2 wheels, which are a set of 2, only for $20, which is nice. So we take a look at the wheels here. First time we're seeing these, so these are definitely going to be used for Mario Kart World. I might get these. Probably way later on. But it's interesting, so you have your Joy-Cons here. They're pretty set. They look comfortable here. And then, of course, we have some more stuff. This is the back of how it looks, and obviously how we can see it used in hand, and then it can be easily, taken out of the wheel. So let's look at this. Hit the road with these fun steering wheel attachments. Place your Joy-Con 2 controller into the Joy-Con 2 wheel to enjoy more realistic control and a better grip in racing style games. The smooth magnetic connection helps keep your Joy-Con 2 controller secure even in the most wild of races. The set includes one light blue and one light red wheel accessory, and of course this is sold separately outside of the Switch 2 system. And then here's other stuff. The Nintendo Switch 2 camera. It's pretty self-explanatory. This is a very generic camera that you can place on the top here. You can use it when playing specific games. For example, we know Super Mario Party Jamboree has an expansion that is going to be used as sort of like the gimmick game for this. And it's $50. A dedicated USB-C camera made especially for the Nintendo Switch 2 includes one USB-C charging cable. Whether in TV mode, tabletop mode, or handheld mode, you can video chat with friends or use other in-game camera features by plugging this camera into the USB-C port on top of the system. Place the Nintendo Switch 2 camera wherever you like and adjust its angle to get the best shot. The lens can capture a wide view too, so even big rooms or groups of people can get in on the fun. Its compact size makes the camera easy to move and place where you need it to be. The wide angle lens can be freely adjusted to get everyone in on the action no matter the room size. Plus, a high sensitivity image sensor can adjust the brightness automatically to detect faces, which is, how they get your face and stuff like that. When you're not using the camera, you can cover the lens with the built-in privacy shutter, which is actually an interesting thing with this camera. And of course, sold separately outside of the Switch 2. And then, in case you need it, they do sell separately the Switch 2 dock set for $110. So here's the Switch 2 dock, and it looks like just how they built the Switch 2 dock itself, this screams to me that hopefully this doesn't scratch, you know, the system. Because the Switch 1, early on in its life, we saw a lot of people was getting scratches on their stuff. I immediately got a screen protector on mine when the console released. But this, I actually really love how the Switch 2 dock looks here. It looks very good. This is the charging, you know, this is obviously the charging block. Here's some of the USB plugs and stuff like that. And, you know, more looks into the dock system and stuff like that. So yeah, $110. Replace your Nintendo Switch 2 dock or set up a second one. Adding an extra Nintendo Switch 2 dock lets you easily set up a second TV in your house for big screen gaming action. Includes a Nintendo Switch 2 dock and the AC adapter, USB-C charging cable, and ultra high-speed HDMI cable, which is W's. And then here's a Nintendo Switch 2 carrying case and screen protector, which is probably something I'm going to buy immediately for this because I need a screen protector. This goes for $35. Here's the case. Actually looks pretty nice. Here's the back of it. Has some straps up there as well. I'm assuming this could be used for the Joy-Cons, maybe? Help protect your Nintendo Switch 2 system with this stylish and sturdy carrying case along with a screen protector and cleaning cloth. Awesome. Then you have an all-in-one carrying case. So this sort of you have this square-looking case, and pretty much when you open it, this is what it has. So you put all your other accessories up here. You put the straps up here as well. And then this is where you're supposed to put the system and the dock, which I think is pretty insane. You can put the charging grip, your Joy-Cons here, and the Pro Controller, and then if you have any other things, you can put right here. And what I love is, if you can see right here, where my mouse is, and if you can see over here, they even add icons of which is supposed to go where. I'm assuming a lot of people are actually going to buy this accessory because you get to pretty much put all your stuff in this spot, and it's going to be comfortable. And I love this because if you're traveling or you're going to a person's house and you're trying to play some Switch 2, you can pretty much take this all-in-one carrying case and bring it over. It is $80 though, which I think is a bit expensive for this, but hey, the case can store and carry all equipment needed to play in TV mode, including the Nintendo Switch 2 system, Nintendo Switch 2 dock, Joy-Con 2 controllers, various cables, and up to 6 game cartridges, which is fire. And then Nintendo Switch 2 AC adapter, of course, just going for $30. It's literally just, you know, the block and then the cable. So this is a replacement for the AC adapter included with each Nintendo Switch 2 system. It can be connected to either the Nintendo Switch 2 system or the Nintendo Switch 2 dock. The AC adapter and cable can be separated for easy storage. And then other stuff here, manufacturers suggest a retail price, actual price may vary. We also see micro SDs, you know, just in case. However, on the bottom here, obviously they say licensed products. But right here is a very interesting thing to keep of note as we end the accessories part here. Many Nintendo Switch accessories are compatible with Nintendo Switch 2. So if you have a Nintendo Switch 1 Pro Controller, if you have, you know, stuff like, that's just primarily just Nintendo Switch 1 accessories, whatever you bought for the console, they are actually compatible with the Switch 2. So you can use them to play with, which is what I'm probably going to use my Switch 1 Pro Controller during a lot of the games for the Nintendo Switch 2. Personally me, right? Let's talk about some of these and what I would personally get, right? So stuff that already comes with the system, I am usually very protective with my stuff, and I still have had everything that I bought the console with. I still have it here, so I should be all set with that in terms of stuff like that. This charging grip seems cool. I don't know how necessary it is though, because I'm assuming the Joy-Cons will just charge with the console when it's on the dock. I think the Joy-Cons, I mean, they look awesome, but this is an insanely overkilled price if you're trying to buy another thing. Pro Controller, do I like the price of the Pro Controller? I don't really know, but I could see myself buying a Pro Controller down the line. I can see myself, you know, buying a carrying case and screen protector. The main thing I'm for sure getting is a screen protector. And then I would assume I maybe get this depending when I travel. That thing, that all-in-one carrying case, is actually a cool thing that you can get. So, again, full-on accessories. This is pretty cool. Now let's get into Nintendo Switch 2 third-party support, right? So, of course, let's begin by talking about some of the stuff here. So of course, big games, you know, you have your Hades 2, which obviously is going to run well on the Switch 2. You have Borderlands 4, it's going to be coming, I'm assuming when this game comes out. You have Split Fiction coming, You have Cyberpunk 2077, which I'm going to say this, people in the Nintendo Switch 2 experience have actually said this game runs very well, which is nice. Street Fighter 6. Now, I actually have to talk about it a bit here. There's people saying at the Nintendo Switch 2 experience that Street Fighter 6 actually has Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive modes. And they're even saying that the SF6 port on the Switch 2 actually runs very well, which is nice. FF7 Remake, this is perfect for Square Enix, of course. You have Bravely Default. This is the HD remaster that's coming to the Switch 2 very soon. You have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, of course, makes a lot of sense. Hogwarts Legacy. You have Civilization 7. You have Elden Ring, surprisingly getting a Nintendo Switch 2 port. This was one of the first third parties they had coming. Enter the Gungeon 2. This is going to be one of the first physical copy games I buy, which is Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. And obviously we got a glimpse that we now know the people who is working on Hitman World of Assassination Signature Edition, which is coming to Switch 2. We know that they're actually doing Project 007, and more information will come out soon for that. We obviously know Star Wars Outlaws is coming. We know Daemon X Machina is getting a sequel, and it's coming out on the Switch 2. Now what's interesting is the people who did Undertale, obviously we all know about Deltarune. We now know that Deltarune Saga continues with the introduction of chapters 3 and 4 available for the first time, and this game with chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can play all of them on launch day. I think that's one of the biggest third parties. It's going to make a lot of sales, I think, on the console. And then the last two was Survival Kids. Sadly, this game, this is where the Switch 2 Direct stream crashed, but I did see this game afterwards. It looks pretty cool. And then Starseeker, which also looked very cool. But in terms of third parties, what do I see myself personally getting down the line from these first third-party edition games that we are seeing here? Personally, Yakuza 0, I have been wanting to get into the Yakuza series for a while. So Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, I think for me makes a lot of sense for me to get into that. I think Daemon X Machina looks cool. I mean, I could get into that. But the majority of these games, I'm going to be honest, I may be outside of Bravely Default. I don't see myself getting, since I already have the majority of these games on the PS5. I mean, obviously people have been saying that Cyberpunk 2077 is a fantastic Switch 2 port from what they played on the Switch 2 experience, which is awesome. People say Street Fighter 6, a lot of them are wanting to buy that day one now because of how great it runs and the fact that it has exclusive Switch 2 modes and stuff like that. And then obviously, you know, you have big hitters, Square Enix obviously getting their games ported to the Switch 2, Bravely Default is a big remaster and stuff like that. Hate Borderlands 4, Hades 2, you know, those are big and stuff like that. So, of course, that is awesome for those third parties. Now, this section of the video is going to be about the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games. So obviously they showed that we can play Nintendo Switch 2 games, it's backwards compatible with Nintendo Switch 1 games, and then with Nintendo Switch 1 games there will also be Nintendo Switch 2 Edition versions of those games. So let's take a look at that, right? The Nintendo Switch 2 Edition of a game is a bundle that includes the original game and its upgrade pack, which enhances the game to take advantage of the capabilities of the Nintendo Switch 2 system, available only for select games. And then I'm going to clear up some confusion because this got some people confused on the internet, so I'll clear it up in this video right now. Contents and enhancements of the upgrade pack vary by game. They can include visual improvements, new features, or additional game modes. Features and content of a Nintendo Switch 2 Edition game can only be played on Nintendo Switch 2. If you have the original Nintendo Switch game as either a physical or digital version, you can upgrade to the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition by purchasing the game's upgrade pack from the Nintendo eShop, My Nintendo Store, or retailers. After you upgrade, the original Nintendo Switch game can still be played on Nintendo Switch, but the features and content of the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition can only be played on Nintendo Switch 2. So, pretty much, that is that. And what we also know is that if you're a Nintendo Switch Online Plus Expansion Pack member, you get the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 editions for free. And what's insane is that the games were running at 4K 60 FPS, which those games now look some of the most beautiful games I have ever seen. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond getting the Switch 2 edition is pretty incredible, and a lot of people say that there's no reason why you should play Prime 4 Beyond on Switch 1. You have to play it on Switch 2 from what we've been hearing of the Switch 2 experience, because of course Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is a game that can now we know was confirmed it can run on 4K 60 FPS, and 1080p 120 FPS, and the game just runs smoothly. And a lot of people have been saying it's one of Nintendo's prettiest games to date, which is awesome. For example, as an example, let's look at Super Mario Party Jamboree, which is what I showed earlier, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition and Jamboree TV. So, a new way to play exclusive to Nintendo Switch 2, Jamboree TV, new modes that use mouse controls, microphone, and a compatible USB-C camera, which is sold separately. Players appear within the game via camera play using a compatible USB-C camera. Game share compatibility for local multiplayer, 1440p resolution in TV mode, Full HD. So WQHD, which is 1440p, and then Full HD 1080p in tabletop mode and handheld mode, visually enhanced with improved frame rate, and then the Nintendo Switch game of Super Mario Party Jamboree. Future Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games. For more about each game's upgrades and enhancements, please check their official websites. And then, of course, they show more intel and information here. The Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo YouTube channel also has videos that are pretty much overviews. I'm pretty much just going to go through what exactly these games do. So let's look at Zelda Breath of the Wild, right? It's a launch Switch 2 upgrade, and it supports for the Zelda Notes game-specific service via Nintendo Switch app, improved frame rates and resolution, faster load times, and HDR support. Those are the main things. Zelda Notes is pretty much like what they showed on the video. It's pretty much a thing that you can access through the Nintendo Switch app, and pretty much it gives you like specific details and stuff. What they showed for Breath of the Wild is it can be used as a GPS, and it can help you to know where to go. And then Tears of the Kingdom, it actually shows you you can scan QR codes for your builds, and you can actually share it to other people so that way they can use your upgrades, which I think is cool. Speaking of Tears of the Kingdom, also a launch date upgrade, and then it supports for the Zelda Notes, once again, game-specific service via the Nintendo Switch app, improved frame rates and resolution, faster load times, and HDR support, which makes a lot of sense. Then, of course, we already talked about Super Mario Party Jamboree. The last thing they just put here is that it's visually enhanced and improved frame rate. Makes a lot of sense. Kirby the Forgotten Land, the very first 3D Kirby game we've ever gotten. Nintendo Switch 2 Edition with a star-crossed world. So pretty much what we've seen from this so far, especially from what we've seen from Nintendo Treehouse, is that this game pretty much has extra content when it comes to, you can go to during post-game, you can go through these levels, and they have different paths, they have different ways to go about it, and it's very interesting. I think that's pretty cool for a lot of people, who is very into 3D Kirby, obviously, with this game. I think it's going to be a big one. And of course, it says here, just upgrade details, a new story, star-crossed world, visually enhanced with improved frame rate. And then the other big one, outside of Metroid Prime 4, which is in late 2025, we know it's coming out, it's Pokemon Legends ZA, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. Bro, the fact that I saw a Pokemon game for the first time since Pokemon Emerald on the Nintendo Game Boy Advance, the fact that I saw a Pokemon game for the very first time run at a smooth 60 frames per second, I could not believe what was happening. And Pokemon, I think, is about to be super saved on the Nintendo Switch 2, which is going to be crazy. The upgrade details is that it's improved performance with higher frame rate and resolution, which is great. That is all that game needed, honestly. And then, we obviously have more stuff. We know Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, I just talked about this, support for mouse controls using Joy-Con 2 controllers, and a lot of people actually have been coming out during the Nintendo Switch 2 experience, and they've been saying that this is the optimal way to actually play the game, which is interesting, so I'm definitely going to try that out when I play this game. Enhanced resolution, textures, and load times. Choose from 2 display modes. So quality mode runs at 60 frames per second in 4K, so it's the 4K 60 frames per second that I talked about. Resolution in TV mode, 1080p while in handheld mode. And then performance mode runs at 120 frames per second in 1080p resolution, so that's the 1080p 120 frames per second mode I was talking about, and in TV mode, and then 720p in handheld mode, which makes a lot of sense. So both display modes feature HDR support. So if you're playing Metroid Prime 4 on the TV mode, you're playing this at 4K 60, or you could play this at 1080p on 120 frames per second. If you're playing this on handheld mode, you can play this at 1080p 60 frames per second, and then 720p 120 frames per second. So it's pretty much up to preference, and obviously we're going to see how that's going to go. How do you purchase the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition? Shop Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games at retailers that sell video games at the official My Nintendo Store or Nintendo eShop or your system. Physical versions, Nintendo Switch 2 description band on the bottom package, makes a lot of sense, and then the digital version is just, digital as you can expect. Already have the game on a Nintendo Switch. If you already have the Nintendo Switch version of the game in either physical or digital form, you can upgrade to the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition by purchasing the game's upgrade pack. and then it shows, you know, you have the game, only includes the upgrades and enhancements, which I'm assuming these are like $5 to $10 upgrade packs, and then you have the Nintendo Switch 2 edition there. How to purchase an upgrade pack. Buy upgrade packs at retailers, the official My Nintendo Store, and Nintendo eShop on your system. And then, just to briefly talk about it, they showed the UI, the Nintendo Switch 2 UI. It's the exact same thing, dude. Like, I'm gonna just show real quick right here. It's literally the exact same thing, pretty much as the Switch 1. The only thing is it looks a lot more boxed, and this looks more circular in. There's also a lot of new stuff here. This is the game card thing. This is the icon, the C-button icon, the virtual game card icon, obviously new stuff there. The My Nintendo Store, shop upgrade packs to the official My Nintendo Store and have them download directly to your system. Oh, sorry. Let's talk about the Nintendo eShop first. You can browse and purchase upgrade packs from your system via Nintendo eShop, accessible from the home menu. Then the My Nintendo Store, shop upgrade packs in the official My Nintendo Store and have them download directly to your system. Then you have retailers. You can buy digital codes for upgrade packs at retailers that sell Nintendo games. So pretty much, you know, the little things you can get from there. To download the upgrade pack, visit Nintendo eShop on your device and enter the download code on your card. Included with Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack membership, this is what I was talking about. Nintendo Switch Online and expansion pack members get access to the following upgrade packs at no additional cost. You must have the physical or digital version of the game to download its upgrade pack. Active membership required, which I think, you know, that makes a lot of sense, and I'm very happy that that is the thing. So of course you get Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom running 4K 60 FPS on fucking launch, which is crazy, man. Also, I just want to talk about this. This is pretty much just showing games that are also coming out very soon during a scissor reel that they did for the Nintendo Switch 2. So here's some games, you know, that are also coming out, third-party support. I'm just going to briefly talk about this. They showed Hollow Knight Silksong, and pretty much, you know, these are also other. They also showed Marvel Cosmic Invasion again, which is for sure a game I'm getting on this console day one. I also might consider, you know, maybe getting the Raito remaster, the Kunitsugami game, Path of the Goddess. I might consider getting those, but that's really outside. That's all I really have to talk about here. The next thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to talk about it in a very simplified way here, is essentially the game cards, right? So of course I'm gonna pull it up here. Game key cards, they had to be explained because again, this is another thing that Nintendo got people confused with. So I'm gonna talk about these, right? Now, because they're having a lot of third-party, massive game files, third-party games, and they're gonna be put on game cartridges, I'm gonna be talking about how I feel about the physical game copies, you know, boxes and how they look, the box arts and stuff like that, and then talking about this. So first I want to talk about the box arts. Let's look at this, right? For example, like Donkey Kong Bonanza. I don't get what the backlash with this is. I actually like how these look. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I actually like how this looks. To be quite honest with you, I actually really like how, you know, they have this spine here. I love this, and then obviously the full art. And another thing too, I'll show real quick here. So right here we can see actually the full box art pretty much. So we can see the Nintendo Switch 2 label at the top, and then right here you can pretty much see Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. They have the release dates. This was at the Nintendo Switch 2 Experience, and then as well they show the spine. So it's actually going to be covers going through from the middle of it through the spine. I actually love how these look, to be honest with you, and I know the back is going to have a lot of detail. Me personally, I'm so excited to continue the Nintendo Switch 2 physical copy buys. And since we're talking about the physical games and the game key cards, I also want to mention this as well. The games, the physical games are the same price as the digital games. Someone on the internet accidentally got a different currency mixed up and thought that games are going to be $10 more with the physical version. Guys, don't worry, physical copies are the same price as the digital copies of the game. However, Mario Kart World people, please, for the love of God, I'm begging, please, if you want to play this game on day one, just buy the bundle. Please don't spend any dollars only on this game to really try to prove a point. Please, for the love of God, thank you. You get the game $30 cheaper. However, the game I will absolutely recommend you buy physically is Donkey Kong Bonanza, because goddamn, bro, that game art-wise looks awesome, and so I really recommend people buy that game physically, of course. But yeah, that's pretty much just a brief of this, you know, Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza. They look very good actually with these boxes. I mean, Mario Kart World has a lot of detail. I love how many characters they were able to really like pack into that one space. And then Donkey Kong Bonanza, the art and like just all the colors in here look awesome. But the spines definitely make this look awesome. So back to what we were talking about over here with the game key cards, right? So back to this image. So pretty much, let's talk about physical game cards. So these games are games that are completely normal. Pretty much, they're standard game cartridges with the full game on the card. So pretty much what those games do is if you pop it into the system, they work just like how they did in the Switch one. You pop it in, it's already automatically downloaded. You can play the game as soon as you insert that cartridge in. There's no wait for a download time. However, games with game key cards, for example, they use Street Fighter 6 here. It says on the bottom, if you look right here, that it's a game key card and it has that logo. So it's a physical game cartridge that requires a download. So it's pretty much something that we already have in the gaming industry right now. You know, if you pop in the game, you have to wait a specific download time. I think that makes a lot of sense. Switch 1 had full game downloads, which is correct. Any game that you popped in has it. So this is the first time Nintendo actually has a console where some games actually have to. But because mainly the games I'm buying on the Switch 2 are first-party Nintendo games, I'm completely fine. Every single Nintendo Switch 2 first-party game will most likely be the full game on the cartridge. So I'm happy that as soon as I get to pop in Mario Kart World, as soon as I get to pop in Donkey Kong Bonanza, I am personally going to be able to play these games day one, and everything's going to be fine. So these Switch 1 releases were just, you know, cases that included download codes. Switch 2 game key cards will allow the resale and sharing of downloadable games because the game key card is tied to a system and simply unlocks the game, which is actually a good feature. So honestly, in my opinion, I don't really have a problem with this, you know, because the Switch 2, especially because we're going to talk about it later with a specific game, the third-party support already for this console is insane for a console in its first year. Like, it's going to be crazy, and so I understand, you know, bigger games with a lot of content in it that is going to be a lot to fill in within a game cartridge. It makes a lot of sense that there's going to be a specific download for some games. I know Bravely Default and Street Fighter 6 are some of them. However, for me, as someone who's happy that this game is going to be all the detail and content on the cartridge, something like Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, a game I'll be able to buy on day one, is going to have all the content on the cartridge. And the good thing is, they make it very clear. If it's just the box art, then it's the full game on the cartridge. But if it has that game key card on the bottom, you know exactly what it is. But again, I love that this is very specified here. And of course, I'm going to mainly be buying physical games on this console, so I am happy that this is a thing. Next up, I have been looking forward to talking about this. Hold on, I have to play the music of jingle of this just so we can have the build up. Here we go. Dude, oh my god, like the fact that we got the Nintendo GameCube on Nintendo Switch Online now is just crazy. So of course, yeah, the Nintendo Switch 2 has a Nintendo GameCube now on the Nintendo Switch Online and Expansion Pass member, which by the way, I'm going to talk about this, but the value now that you get for the price, it's only $60 a year, the value you get with the Nintendo Switch Online plus Expansion Pass, it's really insane the amount of value you get. It's kind of crazy, and it goes for such a good price, the amount of value you get. But yeah, we have the Nintendo GameCube now, one of Nintendo's most beloved consoles. Look at that GameCube controller. But yes, Nintendo Switch Online Classic game libraries are being renamed to Nintendo Classics, which I actually like. I actually love that they're talking about Nintendo Classics. And then, of course, we was talking about for so long, for so many years, you know, we wanted Nintendo Switch, you know, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD ports. This essentially confirms both of them are just being their GameCube ports being ported over to the Switch, which I understand. So we have first The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. This game has always been one of the best looking Zelda games in terms of, you know, its art style and stuff like that. I really love it. So this is one of the first games that's going to be there that you can play right away with it. This is massive. Soul Calibur 2, bro. And the reason why this is massive is because, like, this is awesome. A lot of people loved playing the GameCube version of this game, and this game exclusively has Link as a playable character here, which we're going to see very soon. Here he is, yep, Link from The Legend of Zelda. He's a playable character in this game. He came exclusively with the GameCube version of this game, so this is awesome. You get to play this. And then F-Zero GX, right? I'm like, dude, the fact that they've been like showing kind of bits and pieces of F-Zero around us with the Switches kind of gives me a feeling that we're going to be soon getting an F-Zero game soon on the Switch too, a brand new one. But GX being there day one on this Switch Online GameCube library is awesome. And apparently, during the Nintendo Treehouse, they showed Super Mario Strikers is also there, so is that coming day one? We'll have to see. But this is also massive. GameCube games will be able to be played online with friends. Dude, do you know how crazy this is? Like, GameCube, every time it gets updated, it's going to be like such a massive update because, like, dude, the GameCube had such a crazy library, it's going to be insane. So, now the fact that we know that this is coming day one on the Nintendo Switch Online, dude, if they bring the DS and if they bring the Wii, I'm going to lose my shit. Because the Nintendo Wii is my childhood baby. If they bring that over to the Switch Online, I am actually going to lose my shit. I would expect, right, being realistic, the first thing I can see coming to Nintendo Switch Online after the GameCube, like 2 years later or something, will probably be the DS. And then around the end of it, if they can pull off the Wii, I would love that. But the fact that we have online functionality with these games is perfect. And of course, we're going to get more and more updates. And we even got more games confirmed coming right away to the Switch Online. But first, let's talk about this. They also showed that you can view and change your control format, your button mapping, pretty much. Which is awesome. You know, they showed the Switch 2, they showed all the different buttons, they showed the GameCube controller through that stuff, and I think that's cool that they showed that, and you can change it. And then, dude, here are some of the games coming immediately with the Switch 2. We have Super Mario Sunshine, which is awesome, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, which is big, Pokemon X The Gale of Darkness. How, bro? How did we get this game? Super Mario Strikers, which, like I was talking about earlier, this might be coming day one because the Treehouse was there with them, so that might be interesting. Chibi Robo, Plug Into Adventure, awesome that we're getting Chibi Robo here, that's awesome. Luigi's Mansion, of course, and then finally, Luigi's Mansion, which was a launch title for the GameCube back in the day, that's awesome. And then Pokemon Coliseum, bro. Dude, the fact that we're getting these specific 2 Pokemon games, that is crazy. That is legit. So these are other games that are going to be coming soon, and more titles will be added. Please note, the titles planned for release may change without advance notice, which, I mean, obviously makes a lot of sense. But I would assume these would come very soon. And then available on the same day as Nintendo Switch 2. So the Nintendo GameCube we know is for sure coming on the Nintendo Switch 2 launch day, which, I'm not going to lie, I only have the original, the first tier of the Nintendo Switch Online, which just gives me NES, SNES, and Nintendo Game Boy. This is automatically going to make me upgrade. Like, the fact that now we got the GameCube, and also we're getting the Zelda updates with those games, yeah, I'm there day one, bro. Like, I'm gonna be there to play the Game Boy Advance, the Nintendo N64, the Nintendo GameCube, all these consoles that I can just have access to with the Switch Online. I'm absolutely there. Day one with the GameCube. So yeah, that is super awesome. And the other thing they showed is the fact that the Nintendo GameCube controller is also being sold separately for people who have Nintendo Switch Online. So if you have Nintendo Switch Online, you can buy it through the Nintendo website, and you can actually use this. And what's a fun thing that I'm going to mention here for a lot of people is, if you want, actually, this controller has Bluetooth, man. The other controllers that they've had from Nintendo Switch Online, they have Bluetooth in them, so you can actually use these controllers on your PC just to play around if you want to use them. You know, just something I just want to throw out there. So if you want, you can use this controller now as well as Bluetooth wise and stuff, which is awesome. So of course, you can see obviously the C button is also included with the GameCube controller and available on the My Nintendo store same day as Nintendo Switch 2, which is sick. So of course, GameCube coming to NSO, that's a pretty awesome W, and of course the controller is a big get as well. So that is pretty huge, just in general, and of course, definitely probably going to buy this controller, I would assume. So yeah, we'll see how that goes, but that is awesome. And of course, Nintendo Switch Online just has so much value, and I encourage people to buy $60 a year for that expansion pass. I think it is going to be worth it. So the last thing I'm going to be talking about in this video is a game that is from software that is somehow a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive. Is called the Duskbloods. And I have some opinions about this because this kind of is looking kind of like a Bloodborne. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of people that have played these games have been saying that. Now actually this looks like a multiplayer game. It's got confirmed it's a multiplayer game that's going to be coming on the Switch 2, which is interesting. It's like a thing you can play with people to fight the enemies, which is awesome. But this game actually looks very good. and you know, it's a whole Souls-like from FromSoft, being exclusive on the Nintendo Switch 2. Again, this is a massive get for Nintendo. Again, dude, I'm talking about it. The fact that they showed this game, and the fact that there was so much third-party support, right? The big, massive ones, mind you, and the fact that they showed this game, I think we are potentially going to see the Nintendo Switch 2 become the greatest third-party support Nintendo console of all time, because the fact that they're getting a From Software game that a lot of people said gave them Bloodborne vibes looks crazy. And of course, it seems like this game is like a Vampire Souls-like. Like, I originally, when I saw this trailer, I was telling people around me, like when I was watching this, I was like, this seems like a Castlevania Souls-like. However, it's a vampire multiplayer Souls-like from what it seems. It looks actually really good. It looks like it's going to run very well. And it seems like Nintendo, the fact they're getting Elden Ring, and then the fact they're getting other FromSoft stuff being ported to Nintendo Switch 2, and then the fact that we have the Duskbloods being a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive game, bro, the possibilities with third-party support on this console could be surreal. And the fact that we now obviously have confirmation that Street Fighter 6 has Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive modes and stuff like that. Again, guys, I encourage you to look into those Nintendo Switch 2 experience content, because they're going to be crazy. But yeah, the Duskbloods, dude, this game looks awesome. It just, like, it looks very expansive. The world here looks incredible. It looked like I said, man, this just being on a Nintendo console, I can't believe this is a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive. We know it's coming out next year and stuff like that. And yeah, but this will be the last game I'll talk about during this video, simply because, you know, the first party games, I want to give them their own separate videos. So of course, stay tuned for stuff like that, because they will be getting full analysis and breakdowns, you know, their first original trailers, and then their Nintendo Treehouse content, and then other things that I've been seeing on the Nintendo Switch 2 experience. We'll be talking about those in those videos. Here, I just wanted to specifically talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 console and hardware, you know, its third-party support, the things with Switch 2 editions and stuff like that. We also know there's specific Nintendo Switch 1 games that are just straight up just going to have free, like, visual upgrades. That's, like, all it's having. And there's, like, a full list that you can check out on the Nintendo website. It's very brief. I mean, it's just visual upgrades. I mean, you can expect what to expect with those games and stuff like that. But yeah, the Duskbloods is a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive. And, I mean, it's coming out next year, only on this console. Pretty insane partnership we're getting. And yeah, so of course this is the last game we'll be talking about in this video for sure. 2026, available only on Nintendo Switch 2. So guys, that is all the coverage we have for this video. Yes, this is a long, full analysis and breakdown. I recorded this, you know, just pretty much just to talk about stuff like this. But yeah, of course, there's going to be a lot more content coming around this. The next week, expect like 4 to 5 videos, I'm not going to lie, about specific games. I will be talking about Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and I will also be talking about Kirby Air Ride speculation, about everything. Of course, guys, you want to stay tuned for those. Those videos will have the Nintendo Switch 2 experience. As I was doing this video, I was realizing I should probably talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 experience stuff, only those games, since they're obviously the ones that have a lot to talk about when it comes to those. But yeah, this is mainly about the console and hardware. We obviously know about the first party support that the console is going to have. I wanted to mention, of course, some stuff about the Mario Kart World price and stuff like that, but I hope this was all the intel and information you guys needed about the console. I hope I got to clear up some confusion in this video, and of course, I hope that this video will be able to help out other people who are looking forward to this console to understand what's happening. Of course, pre-orders, we originally thought it was going to be coming on April 9th. That was the original date, but of course, due to real world events happening right now, we have to wait a little bit here in the USA to really get the Nintendo Switch 2 pre-orders to go. And of course, guys, be there as soon as possible, because if you want to pre-order this console, trust me, it's going to be crazy. But yeah, other than that, Nintendo Switch 2, this is a big console. I'm so excited to see the future of Nintendo for sure.